The election will be September 29th on Tuesday from 12 noon until 8 o'clock at night. And we have two things on the ballot. Basically, the 2021 tax levy for approval by voters. And we have two candidates for two open positions on the Board of Trustees. Welcome Jerry DeSev and Brianna Clark, who are both here tonight. And we will talk to them in just a minute. I wanted to give just a brief summary of the budget question. Actually, it's the tax levy question before we get to our candidates. The tax rate increase that we are requesting for 2021 is 1.99%. This is partly an effort to stay under the 2% tax cap, but the 2% tax cap is not actually a 2% tax cap. It does vary from years to year, depending on cost of living figures and some other mysterious numbers from the controller's office. So it may be less than 2%, and usually is. So we have targeted 1.99%, which will raise $23,450 for an addition for our 2021 budget. Basically, what it does cover would be salary increases and benefits to employees. Salary increases are based on a standard salary schedule that was approved by the board in 2019. And in order to meet that, we do need a small increase in our tax levy. We also have an increase in health insurance coming up. So both of those things, the salary increase and the health insurance, amounts to about $28,775. Well, a lot of the rest of the budget is pretty much the same. We did reduce material slightly in order to compensate for two things, really. The increase in salary and health insurance, but also the fact that last year the library did go fine free, as you recall. This was before the epidemic, but I think it's long-term very good decision. It allows us to really concentrate on what the library is about. It's about education. It's about encouraging reading. It's about books. It's about that sort of thing. It's not about fines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we like to think of ourselves as part of the book community rather than part of the penal code. But so that left us a slight gap as well, and that's part of what the increase will help to close. The rest of it looks pretty similar to 2020, and a lot of the rest of it is a matter of overhead. Is there any, I think that's it. Is there any questions on the budget going forward?
What is the increase amount to dollar-wise? Like how much more, you know, is it a couple of dollars more than last year overall, or?
I estimate probably in the neighborhood of $1.
A dollar more.
Taxpayer.
Yeah, because it sounds pretty low.
I don't have the technical explanation. I asked the city controller to give me some figures. I don't have those yet.
Uh-huh.
But based on the fact that it's really about 2%, I have to believe it's pretty close to about $1 for the average tax.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Other questions on the budget going forward?
Nope.
With that being said, we have two candidates with us tonight who are running for a seat on the board. Their names are on the ballot. Brianna Clark, and I had some introduction, but I don't know if I can. But I will give you the chance to fill in there. Let me double check where I am here. Brianna Clark is a social worker and psychotherapist at Eastern Door Counseling Center in Rensselaer. Graduate of Vassar College, and she's worked in a variety of places, including the New York City Ballet. We have Jerry DeSav, who is a long-time Troy resident, developer of particularly historic property, and a user that goes back, a user of the Troy Public Library probably goes back as far as me. And that's a long way.
Way farther than you.
if you can remember the Mummy, you'll go back.
I remember the Mummy. And as I was a kid when I saw the Mummy, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like to, we've got a couple of standard questions, but Brianna, if we could start with you, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name's Brianna Clark. I am a newer resident of Troy. I purchased my home here a little over 2 years ago. I'm pretty eager to put down roots and get involved in the community. Libraries have always been a constant in my life, and so joining the board seemed like a natural fit for me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Brenda, you are living in the Freer Park neighborhood?
Yeah, I actually live right next door to Michelle.
Okay.
She's the one who mentioned this as an opportunity for me, which I appreciate, Michelle.
And Bree, Arlene, who is a board member that's leaving, lived in our house in 1960. She as a yeah. Well, you moved out in 61, right? Right after you're on mute, but right after the pool was put in 1960, and she and her family moved out the next year.
It was 64 the pool was put in.
Oh, 64, okay.
So are you in the brick house next to Michelle?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so you're in Snyder's old house.
Yeah.
I know it as Snyder's house.
We actually still have the original blueprints, and it says it was built for the Snyders. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I think we need to get back to the information.
Yes, we do. I'm sorry. It's exciting.
Usually you pull me in
to say,
back
though,
into
my
the
staff wonders why I keep
That's
calling
right.
it. This is a small town. Jerry, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, that'd be
Well, I
great.
was born in Troy, still here. I lived very briefly outside of Troy, but came back. And my ex-husband and I, having grown up in Troy, were very distressed to see all the vacant buildings after the urban renewal failed. And some of the wonderful historic buildings, the McCarthy Building, the Market Block, the Keenan Building, we didn't want to see them get further deteriorated because of vacancy. So we took those on and developed those, did a lot of the infrastructure of the Market Block building, but we completely developed the McCarthy and the Keenan buildings and restored the Keenan building back to its original facade. So buildings, you know, and of course the library is a wonderful part of Troy's fabric. And so the building itself and the downtown library, and as well as the Lansingburg Library. So I'm very interested in the preservation of these wonderful historical gems. I have worked as a director of a conflict resolution program in Rensselaer County, and have developed several methods of teaching conflict resolution to children, which I did in one of my lifetimes. I also worked in state prison at Green Correctional Facility, working with inmates and teaching conflict resolution as well as other life skills to them. And then worked in the education department of the New York State Department of Financial Services, approving courses and instructors, et cetera, for the insurance agents to take in their continuing education. And I'm just, as you said, I was here since the Mummy. Not as old as the Mummy, but I remember the Mummy. And I just think that this library is so important because it provides such amazing services and programs, and I would like to see it continue and grow. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to be involved in my community again.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions that we'd like to ask, and normally these are timed, the responses are timed for 2 minutes, and we can ask the questions to each person in turn. The first question that comes up is, why do you want to be on the library board? We'll start with Brianna.
Sure. Hi. Sorry, just unmuting myself. I think I mentioned that libraries have always been a constant in my life. I don't consider myself to have fully moved in somewhere until I have a library card. And so that, in conjunction with the fact that I'm a newer resident to Troy and eager to put down roots, it seemed like the natural fit to me. I think that the Troy Library specifically is incredibly special to me in as much as it is such a beautiful, beautiful building. And actually, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the library at my undergraduate. And that was a special place for me. And so I'm really interested in how I can help support maintaining that building and keeping life in it, as well as I'm a social worker by training. And so public services programming, being a place for the community to coalesce around is important to me and is part of my core values. I hope that answers the question, but I'm happy to elaborate more if anyone has further questions.
No, thank you. That's great. Jerry, do you need to repeat the question?
No, I think I understand you want to know why I'm interested in being on the library board. And, you know, as I said, for a while I was very heavily involved in the Troy community. And then, you know, over the years, I've had other responsibilities, which kept me out of serving my community. And it's great to be getting back in to doing that. And particularly with the library, because the library, you know, has such history, both in terms of its physical buildings, but also what's in it. And, you know, so many of my memories are of this library growing up here and doing research for my high school and college papers and things like that. And coming more recently to borrow films about Maureen Stapleton when I was portraying her in The Famous Lady's Tea a couple of years ago. But it just has a wealth of information and wonderful programming for so many people in the community. And, you know, as Brianna was saying, it's a chance to serve a wide variety of people in the community and to feel that I am helping to preserve that experience and hopefully help it grow in, you know, in the directions that who knows where it can go. I think we have a lot of possibilities and I'd like to be part of that.
Thank you. What do you think you will bring to the board? Jerry, if you want to go ahead.
Well, I think part of my, again, knowing the history of Troy and the library, I think will help, hopefully be helpful. But also there are so many directions for us to go with the new technology, et cetera. I have some grant writing skills. Perhaps they would be useful, and I have skills in terms of administration in our family business and the conflict resolution skills. I also might be able to contribute to ideas about keeping the library safe from the virus or contagious diseases, because my background and my going way back, my bachelor's degree is in medical technology. So I've been around a long time and had a lot of different experiences. But I think there are many ways that the library can go in using new technology, et cetera, and also looking for monies that are available from grants, preservation grants, et cetera. So I'm hoping that I can learn what it is the library is doing and where I can fit into that, but also what I can also add to that from my experience and background.
Thank you. Brianna?
Sure. I think that the idea of Jerry and I joining the board together is kind of a unique and special juxtaposition, because it sounds like Jerry brings a lot of historical perspective. You've been involved in the community for so long, whereas I kind of have a fresher take, a fresh perspective, because I'm newer to the area. I also would hope that my background in marketing at New York City Ballet might be helpful. Part of our work there while I was there was we were tasked with a lot of audience development initiatives and how to increase engagement with the ballet, especially among the younger demographic. And that was kind of the crux of a lot of my work there, figuring out how to leverage the social capital of the ballet to increase engagement. And I have a lot of thoughts about how that could translate to increasing community engagement with the Troy Library, especially considering how revered it is in the community as far as, I mean, I've only been around for 2 years, but as far as I can tell. And so that's something that I would like to bring, assuming that it's needed. I'm also very much a data person. So I like digging into the numbers and figuring out what's actually needed and then making choices from there.
Okay, thank you. What library services and or resources do you use? Brianna?
Sure. I think I mentioned this in my bio, but I am never not thinking about what's in my library holds queue. So I use the online system to reserve and put books on hold. And I also use the Libby app for a lot of my audiobook reading. I don't use any of the other services. I know that there are some wonderful programs and a great, it sounds like, book group, and that's something that I would like to pay more attention to and see how we can expand those things.
Jerry?
Well, most recently, I've been part of this discussion group on uncovering race in the in America, led by Jennifer Burns, and that has been a wonderful experience, both in the library and virtually. But there have been so many wonderful programs. There have been programs on genealogy and book discussion groups, etc., and children's programming, which is great. My grandchildren don't live here; they live in Brooklyn. Although one of my grandchildren comes to Lansingburg, they have a house in Lansingburg, and so she has used the library there for some of the programs that have been there. And so I think it's wonderful to have these programs for the children, and I would like to get more involved in those kinds of things and possibly doing some reading, et cetera, because my background is in, my avocation is in theater. And I've done a lot of community theater, and it would be fun to do some more of that with the children in the community. So, and possibly that's something we could bring into the library.
What ideas do you have for the library? Jerry?
Well, as I mentioned, I'd like to see us expand into doing more dramatic kinds of, not so much dramatic, but acting kinds of things for kids to be involved in acting, role playing, that sort of thing. But also, one of the things I'd like to see, we have an extensive collection of physical newspapers from God knows how far back. And I think they need to be digitized so that we could preserve those papers before they crumble to dust. So that's one of the things I'd like to see. And also maybe see how we can interact more with the community libraries in the little towns and the other towns around in Rensselaer County. What resources do they have that we might take advantage of, or do we have that they might take advantage of? Talking to them and kind of having a dialogue and seeing what kind of ways we can all cooperate to do things together. So.
Thank you, Brianna. Yeah.
Sorry. I second Jerry in as much as I would love to see an expansion of public programming. I love the idea of like the dramatic arts. I think that sounds great. I'm also just interested in looking at the data of who uses the libraries, how they use it, and then also what kind of hearing from the community about what they want to hear, what they want to see more in the library, talking to community stakeholders, and then making decisions based from there about the best direction to move the library forward with. The other thought I had is harking back to what I said previously about what an iconic space it is, how revered it is in the community. Knowing that the people of Troy love the library, think it's a beautiful space, how can we leverage people's desires to be in the space for fundraising purposes so that we can, one, expand our base of community members who are involved in the library, and then also potentially expanding the foundation we have to draw upon when we are doing fundraising efforts.
Thank you. Those were the questions that I do have. There are all of our board members here. I don't know if we have other questions of our candidates.
Paul, I received 2 other questions.
Okay.
I don't know whether you want me to bring those up now or
Yeah, that's
whether
good.
people have questions. Okay, one was, how would you increase the profile of the library? so there's greater awareness of the programs and services.
Okay, Brianna.
Sure. I think that that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm saying building upon like the social capital
Nope.
area. Sorry. Oh, okay. Building upon the social capital that the library has in the area. I actually noticed in your bio, Jerry, that you mentioned that you were involved in bringing Victorian Stroll to downtown Troy.
Yeah,
And I guess I'm just thinking about, go ahead.
I was a founder of the stroll, which was meant to show off Troy, and I think it's done a good job.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm thinking like, how can the library be more prominent in that, or in Troy Night Out events, or just like getting people in the doors of the library because it's a cool place to be and it's a beautiful place to be and it's a part of our historic downtown.
Mhm.
Jerry?
Yeah, I agree, Brianna. And it is a wonderful space. And in fact, we, in the early days of the Victorian Stroll, we had fashion shows of Victorian costumes on the beautiful staircase of the library. And those are the kinds of things to, fun and unusual things to bring people in. And I think things in keeping with the historical nature of the building, such as something like a Victorian fashion show. And, I don't know, is it a wedding venue? That's something we want to look at. There are lots of ideas that we could explore. We may not think they're all feasible, but I think we could explore a lot of ways of bringing people in. But I think we need to, raise the banner, and I think we should advertise our beautiful library far and wide, and especially in the smaller towns around, invite people in, and possibly do some programming with other libraries around, so that there's a sharing of ideas and programs and space. It's a big county, a lot of people in it, and not everybody knows our beautiful space. So it would be lovely to bring more people into it.
Okay, Marie, you said you had another question.
Yes. How might the library serve other neighborhoods beyond the branch locations?
Okay, Jerry.
Well, I'm wondering, one of the thoughts I had is, do we have a bookmobile? Is that something we might want to look at? To bring books to where people are, rather than have people have to come to us if they may be limited in their ability to transportation, or their proximity to transportation. So I'm wondering if we might be able to do something like that. I'm afraid I'm losing battery.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm losing steam, not of my own will. There we go.
Well, hurry along.
Yeah.
Brianna?
Sure. Jerry, you stole the words right out of my mouth with bookmobile.
Good, we're on the same page then.
But barring that, like assuming that is financially not feasible, then maybe some sort of like free little library situation in areas that are not as accessible to the library, and stocking those with older books or less desirable books, or just books that we're not worried about losing in circulation, and making those more accessible. The other thought I had is, and I am so sorry if Troy Library has this program. As far as I could tell, you don't. But I know that the Albany Public Library does, they have like a volunteer delivery service for people who are homebound or for whatever reason can't get to the library. And I think that that would be an amazing thing to bring to Troy if we haven't done that already. I mean, right now there's so many people who are homebound, it's even worse than normal, but just in regular times too, of people who are older or disabled and just can't make it to the library, how can we get resources to them?
Yeah, and another thought that, if I may, another thought I had was, and the thought has left me. It was a good one too. But bringing books, bringing books to people is one thing. Oh yes, and the other thought I had was, what about expanding beyond books and movies and things like that? And do we want to consider a tool library or a library for baking goods or cooking goods that you might want for one occasion, but you don't want to buy the thing? And so, is it something we want to even think about getting involved in? But it's another thought, and I think we need to explore all thoughts and then see what works.
Okay, sounds good. Do we have any other questions for our candidates?
I have a question.
Oh,
Can you
wait.
hear me?
Okay. Okay, I got something in the chat box here. Okay, yes, we have a question Evelyn submitted. What do you think is the primary mission of the Troy Public Library, and what would be your focus as a board member? Jerry?
I think the primary mission is to provide educational materials. That doesn't mean they have to be dry; they could be fun. But I think to provide reading and education to the community, to the broad community, and that that we've gone fine free, I think is a wonderful step that's been taken. As you said, more of an education provider rather than a penal system. But I just love that the library is accessible to people of all ages and all classes, and I would like to see that expanded in whatever way we can. And as a board member, I would like to see where we can find resources to do some of these extra things, possibly through grants. As I said, I have some experience as a grant writer, not a lot, but I have secured grants for the different programs that I've worked for. So that's something I feel I might be able to give as a board member.
Okay, thank you. Brianna?
I believe that the primary purpose of a library is to serve the community, primarily by providing informational material to the community. As a board member, I have two thoughts. My first is that I would really like to be involved in figuring out how we can best serve the community and increase overall accessibility for the library. And doing that by looking at, as I've mentioned, at data, at input that we're getting from community members and stakeholders. And then the other thing that I'd really like to focus on is fundraising so that we have the funds that we need in order to support those programs and whatever it is that the community is telling us that they need from us.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. You both focused on the main library. What is your familiarity with the Lansingburg branch? Brianna?
I'm going to be super honest. I don't have a ton of familiarity with the Lansingburg branch. I have visited it a handful of times. I think it is also a historic building that deserves attention. Unfortunately, it seems like it kind of gets the short end of the stick a lot of the times. Maybe because it's just not quite as flashy as the downtown one. And so I don't have a ton of familiarity with the Lansingburg branches, the short answer to the question. And I would hope and would like to have more familiarity with it and more awareness of that branch.
Thank you. Jerry?
And I have to say, I have not had that much familiarity with the building either. Recently, I was at, there was just before Christmas, I think it was, or around Christmas time, there was a lovely gathering that was there that I went to. And I was so impressed with the building and the history of the building. And I thought, I don't know why I didn't know more about it. And I would like to know more about it and find out what the needs of that library are so that we can bring that more into the limelight as well, because it is a wonderful building and has wonderful resources that I think we need to, as Brianna said, just bring out the value and the beauty and the historic nature of that building and the library and what the library has to offer.
Okay, I've got one more question. The ideas presented are great in theory. How do you propose to advocate in the community to support the funding required to implement some of these with equipment, material, staffing, advertising, etc.? Jerry?
Well, I have always been a community advocate for Troy and for the historic buildings in Troy, and certainly for the library. I think we need to just do advertising. I think we need to find ways of getting free public service ads, which television stations give and newspapers give, and figure out how to get in on those opportunities, and just let people know what a great library we have, which is part of our wonderful historic community. Troy has that reputation now, more so than in the 80s when we were redeveloping the buildings. Nobody wanted to invest in Troy, but Troy is the place that people want to come to now. And the historic buildings are part of the reason that they want to do that. And I think that the library is one of the jewels in that crown that maybe people don't see as much, but I think we could do more in terms of public service announcements, which I would want to explore how to find ways to get those.
Thank you. Brianna?
I think that I agree with Jerry. I think people want to be in Troy right now, in part because it is such a beautiful downtown. As you said, the library is one of the jewels in the crown of downtown. And with so many people wanting to be in Troy, with Troy kind of having this cultural moment, as far as I can tell, how do we capitalize on that? And I think that that's kind of what I was hearkening back to when I was saying it's such a beautiful building. People want to be in the building. Actually, of note to me when I was getting my petition signed was more people than not said, it's such a beautiful space. I wish I was there more. And so can we use the fact that people want to be in the building to support fundraising events, whether that's like a fancy cocktail party in the building because it's such a beautiful place and that's a fun place to be at a fancy cocktail party at because it feels fancy. Things like that, so that we're drawing in the people who are coming to this community because they're drawn to how beautiful it is and how historic it is, and getting them involved with the maintenance of those historic buildings so that we can continue to enjoy Troy for years to come.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions at the moment. I don't know if anybody else has any. But I don't know, Evelyn, it's kind of dark there, so we probably need to wrap.
It's getting dark here.
I'd just like to make a comment as an outgoing board member. I am so delighted that both of you are running. And I assume since there's 2 positions, you'll both be on the board, which is absolutely wonderful. And my sadness is that I won't get to work with both of you because I think it looks like it'll be an exciting year. So thank you both for running.
Oh, thank you, Arlene. And I'd like to say that I'm looking forward to getting to know Brianna better and working with her. I think we have a lot in common, and I like her ideas. And I think we will enjoy working with this board.
Okay, thank you all. I think it was an unusual Meet the Candidates night, but it went very well. And
Paul, may I just add, because I haven't met Brianna. Brianna, I'm the current president of the board. So I will be getting in touch with you to after the election to make arrangements, and Jerry for your orientation.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
involvement.
all right.
Shall I make a pitch also? This is Brenda Mirzan. I'm the president of the Friends of the Troy Public Library. I'd like to thank Jerry for just having joined, and Brianna, I encourage you to join the Friends of the Troy Public Library and find out more about us, including the fact that we have a used bookstore in the Lansingburg branch. I always, people on the board will tell you that I always make a pitch to board members to join the Friends, because in lots of ways, we are the interface between the library and the community. We do events in the community, and through social media, reinforce the programming that goes on in the library, and try to bring a larger profile about what the library is all about besides the buildings. We really concentrate mostly on the programs and services that the library offers, which are significant and wonderful. So I encourage both of you to find out more about the Friends, and come to the bookstore, which is now open on Saturdays.
The Friends have been just an enormous support to the library, and recently done some wonderful things like the lights in the stacks at the main library and several other things that I'm blanking on, but thanks so much, Freda.
You're welcome. I'm going to miss being on the board.
And just to introduce the trustees who are on today, you've met Arlene, who, as she said,
Park Boulevard crew.
as she said, is going to be leaving the board after serving for 3 years, though. So, and Evelyn Greenstein is another trustee.
If you don't mind, the vice president of the board, and also the Upper Hudson liaison with Upper Hudson Library System. So it's part of our connection with all the other libraries within Rensselaer County and Albany County. I call it our little collaborative project, kind of the umbrella of all of us. And you'll be invited to attend what they call core training. So you'll get an idea of how Upper Hudson works and some of your responsibilities, fiduciary, legally, etc., as board members through that core training. You'll be receiving this wonderful manual, which everyone says you must dog ear it. It used to be blue, now it's green, but it's the Jerry Nichols book, and it is just chock full of all the things you want to know. Never thought to ask about being a board member at the library.
And next on my screen is Bob Doherty.
Yes, I just want to welcome Brianna. Brianna, I was a lifelong social worker. I recently retired my licenses, so worked both downstate and upstate. When people talk about Lansingburgh, when I went there, it's an old school. It's wonderful. But it's a school where Chester Arthur, the to-be president, was teaching Herman Melville. It's just amazing. I've subsequently found out that Chester Arthur may actually have been born in Canada, came with his family to Vermont when his younger brother died.
Oh my goodness.
So he took up his name. And so people would always say, well, Chester looks older than he actually is. And the opposite is probably true. We may really have had a president who was not born in the United States. It's required by the Constitution. It's fascinating history.
Mhm.
Wonderful building.
And Kirsten.
Greetings. Thank you very much to both of you for being willing to run, and wish you both luck with your runs. You're saying very exciting things, very positive things, and I look forward to, I hope to have the opportunity to work with both of you on several things you talked about in your presentation. So thank you for offering to stand for public service, and I look forward to working with you should you be successful, which I very much think will be the case. So thank you.
And I'll echo all the other board members in thanking you for running as well. It's a big responsibility. There are only 7 board members, so what you do will be really important.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you candidates for running for a position on the board.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Night, Joy.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
You may stop recording.
Okay.